Are you up for the challenge of drawing a character from the game Among Us with a realistic look? In this tutorial, I'm going to share my top tips for achieving this kind of look, which is so recognizable in so many toy art renderings that we see on the internet. But instead of using actual 3D software, we're going to be making this all happen here in Procreate. Also, make sure to grab my 2 free brushes that I offer on my Gumroad page, as those were used in 80 to 90% of this illustration. My name's Leo and you're watching Ghost Papers, so now let's get to it. So today let's try to envision this in a Procreate setting on what a designer toy from the online multiplayer game Among Us would look like. For this tutorial, guys, I haven't prepared a crazy script or step-by-step instructions. It's gonna have steps, of course, but I'm gonna try to make them as I go here in this video. They will be basically the ingredients and the general steps I believe that you need to bring this together. So we're going to start, of course, first of all with research, and we're going to be researching the crewmate, and we see that this character is done in a very stylized way with a very thick outline, and I'm going to be actually basing the illustration with this same angle as we see here on the screen. It's a very simple character. It seems like it doesn't have any arms. It's basically a pair of legs into an astronaut suit with a little backpack and a big visor. So back here in Procreate, we're going to start with a screen size canvas because we're going to be using quite a few layers. We're going to go into the Actions menu, Canvas subsection, and we're going to turn on our drawing guides. And as usual, we're going to go into Edit Drawing Guide and set the cell size to 200 pixels. That gives me just about the right amount of cells and the right cell size so things aren't overly busy there. Then in terms of the brush, we're going to start with the technical pencil, a medium blue color, and not much of a bigger brush here. Start by drawing a very wide circle. Make sure that that circle is centered on screen. And the next step is to create a new layer because we're going to be duplicating this element. Then we're going to be drawing a very big arc here, followed by a small circle. Then you can create another circle, bring it to the right, and connect it with another arc. Then we just need one more little arc here, and basically what we're creating here are the legs of the character. The next step is to duplicate this element, flip it horizontally, and then you have both legs of our character. Next, we're going to create 2 small circles for the region of the visor. Again, we're going to be duplicating them and flipping them horizontally, drag it to the right to the outside of this main shape, because as we know, the visor kind of extends out of that main shape. And then we're just going to be connecting everything with arcs as well. Next up, we're going to draw the backpack. So on the left side of the character, we're going to start by drawing another circle that serves as the top part of the backpack. And then we're going to duplicate that circle, bring it down. But first, let's make sure to scale up this circle because that's basically the shape of the backpack. And then make sure that half of the circle is on the outside of the character. Finally, we're going to connect these circles once again with arcs. The last step here is to basically merge all of the layers and now use a eraser brush. I'm going to be using a monoline as my eraser brush, and I'm going to be cleaning up all the unwanted lines and arcs. So right here we have the final shape or the sketch layer of our character, and we're ready to move on to the next section. So now at this point, I believe we need to pause the illustration and go back into reference, and I actually advise you to find the reference from toy art that you really want to use to base some of the qualities that you find on that image back into your illustration. To give you a better example, I'm going to use the image that we are going to create in this video, and I'm going to list the qualities, the things that we actually want to achieve with it. First, you want to make sure that you're using very soft light and shadows, because the idea of these elements being lit, of how toy art made out of vinyl is lit by photography, is with a very soft diffuse light. Next, we want to make sure that there are some reflections on the visor, and those can be with a little bit more of harsher light and shadows. Next, we also need to make sure that we have some really nice contact shadows at the floor, at the bottom where the character meets the floor. And we also want to make sure that these are going to be the darkest values of shadows. Next up, we also have the projected shadows, and those actually really help not only to give volume, but the direction, to inform the direction of light and shadows in the scene, which, as I've mentioned before, is coming from the top right to bottom left. Finally, we also want to make sure to add those little details that really make the piece jump. And for that, we're talking about rim lights. And rim lights really help to also add volume and really add that final touch of light that's being bounced around the scene and coming back into the dark side of the character. So the next 2 quick steps here for our illustration is to first come up with our color palette. So start with your base layer color. For this character here, I am going to be using some sort of a purple color. So I'm going to paint my base layer color. And from that base color, I'm going to actually choose my 2 darker tones from our base color. So first, I'm going to drag my saturation actually up about 20 to 25%, and then my darkness or my black levels down to about 20 or 25% as well. And that's going to be my first darker value. Then I'm going to repeat this step one more time. So with the same where I landed with this first darker value, I'm going to bring my saturation up once again 20 to 25%, and you're going to find your second level of darkness. So then all you have to do is to repeat this process in an opposite way, starting once again from the base color, and find your 2 brighter values, your brighter value from the base color and then your brightest value for this illustration. And the second and last step here in this section is to define your point or source of light. So now constructing this illustration, guys, first thing that I do, of course, using the sketch layer as my base reference, is first I try to divide the sections that I want to paint, and I paint each section. So in this case here, it's going to be 1 for the body, 1 for the visor, and the third and last one is going to be the backpack. I'm going to paint each with 1 color, and those are going to be the base or the masks for continuing this process. After all of those flat shading sections are painted, we can keep moving by adding light and shadows. So let's start by creating a new layer, setting as a clipping mask just above our base layer, the body base layer of our character. Now with a monoline brush, we're going to start drawing the first shadow section on the body of the character. This process that I'm about to show you, we're going to be repeating this over and over and over. So I'm just going to show you here a couple examples. Now with the darkest color from your color palette, we're going to draw a small section very close to the edges of your shadow section. So now that we have that all in one layer as a clipping mask, we're going to go into the adjustments menu and we're going to add a Gaussian blur as a layer effect. So that's going to give a very smooth result to your shadows. That's going to really smooth out the hard lines that we've drawn with the monoline brush. In this process, guys, once again, this is really important what I'm saying here. I don't want to make this video super long, so I'm going to show you with a couple examples on shadows and on light elements what you need to continue to do to keep adding volume to this character, as well as setting the proper blend modes and opacity for each element. Here's another example where I've set this layer as an overlay layer, and we're doing half of it with the brightest value from our palette and the other half with the darkest value from our palette. Now throwing in this layer some Gaussian blur, and a lot of it is actually going to give you a very nice gradient that helps to give volume to your character. Another important quick tip here, guys, is to once again go back to your references, look for all the details that are there and put that back into your illustration. So right here at the bottom section of the belly of the character, whenever you draw shadows or highlights that actually go and cross the belly section, I'm using the eraser tool and I'm deleting those sections almost with a harsher line so that it really creates the volume or gives the illusion of the volume of the belly that kind of cuts off the legs where the legs actually start. Now a couple tips about the helmet and how I actually went about that. So of course I've created a couple layers there. One was definitely overlay with a bit of shadows. Once again, we go and throw some Gaussian blur onto that layer. Same with the highlights, adding as a screen mode and doing to the opposite side of the helmet, but then as well as adding some photos. And I believe I got one with a very dark and cool kind of sky that had a darker mountain, and that's set as a multiply or overlay mode. And that started to give me some really nice results that resemble the reflections that we usually see on glass helmets. So please use the images and the things that you see here in this video as well as reference from when you're recreating this at home on your side. And once you start seeing the overall picture with that many layers, you will really start to get a sense that this character has volume, that he has contact shadows at the very bottom where the feet touches the ground, as well as projected shadows in the direction of the light. And just one last thing that was actually kind of cool is that I've added an overall gradient on top of everything. Watch how this single layer can completely change the lighting information and the perception of lighting in the scene. So that's it for this video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, a like would be super appreciated, as well as make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon so you don't miss any of these tips and tricks, reviews, and speed paint videos. And that is all for you to become a better digital illustrator. Now on the right side of the screen, there's more content for you guys to watch. One is my latest upload, and the other one is a video that YouTube's recommending you to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.